Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me here on this Tuesday, February 23rd edition of ATS Radio. I'm your host, Adam Burke. I'll be joined today by Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. We're going to talk about golf. Two events here this week, WGC-Workday Championship and the Puerto Rico Open. Got some NHL coming your way on today's show, and we'll also talk NASCAR, where the men behind the wheel are at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Third straight race here in Florida. We'll break that one down on the 1.5 mile track. Over at ATS.io, we are now less than 48 hours away from the posting of my 2021 MLB betting guide, finishing up some of the first drafts with the player futures stuff. Now it's time to go through and edit and just sort of look through everything, cross all the T's, dot all the I's, make sure the grammar is correct and all of that. Put together the PDF. And like I said, I will try to do some different ways of presenting that guide. Not sure I'm going to have time to do what I wanted to with the flip book right away, but maybe that is something that I'm going to take a look at here as far as the 2021 guide. Also over there at the website, picks, predictions, all kinds of good stuff from our talented cast of writers. And make sure you download the ATS app, which you can find in the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. Full article integration with that. It's a bet tracker. It's an odds screen. Tons of quality stuff there in that ATS app. So make sure you download that today. With that, we bring on today's guest. That is Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. And Brian, how's it going today, man?
All right, Adam. What's shaking, man?
You know, same old, man. Working on that baseball betting guide, trying to keep an eye on college basketball with conference tournaments beginning here this week. 2 golf events, NHL. Busy time of year. It just never stops.
Well, the good news is I'm down 1 layer of clothes on the patio this morning. It's going to be 76 this afternoon. Mornings are still chilly, but we're getting there. Thinking about 3 weeks away from 70s all the time and a month away from 80s. So
not here.
I'm excited.
I think today is the first day we've been over 40 in about a month. So, still waiting for that warm up here. And now everything's just a mud pit because we've had, snow that hasn't melted. So now it's going to melt. Won't dry out any of the golf courses until probably early April. So, I guess it is what it is around here. Something that you're, of course, used to from being in that Buffalo area for a long period of time.
No, you love the one big snowstorm, and it's cool, and then you get the snowbanks, and you're right, though. But then those big snowbanks, that they last for 7 weeks, and then they get all muddy and skanked up.
Yep. Well, we'll see what happens with that. But I guess let's go ahead and talk about the NHL. Speaking of melting, the outdoor games, not really as smooth of a process as the NHL was hoping for over the weekend.
Well, if you listened to this endeavor last week, we talked about it. I mean, all week long on every platform I was on last week, looked at the forecast, 40 degrees Saturday, mix of sun and clouds. Sunday, a bright yellow globe on the forecast for Lake Tahoe. And we sat there at the beginning of the week and said under in the Vegas game, over in the Boston game, because sun was the issue. That the goalies and the glare would be a real problem for sure on Sunday. And the one caveat for the Golden Knights was Fleury and Grubauer were 1-2 in the league in save percentage. Knock on wood, it happened. That it worked out that way. They both hit. But the point is that if last Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're talking about the sun going to be this major issue in terms of the way the game's going to be played. And the NHL's there. This was before they even put a board up. How could they not even consider that the sun was going to be an issue? And they had to be more flexible with the start times. If you play it at dusk and then go into the night. But all they cared about was the postcard picture at Lake Tahoe. And they are just really lucky that Nathan McKinnon didn't catch a rut in the ice and blow his knee out. It was just, it's a good idea that went awry. And they're lucky that nobody got hurt. But I don't understand how. And then on top of it, it was like the gift from the gods. The reaction to Saturday's game was to move the Bruins game back to, first it was 4 p.m. local. They moved it to 4:30. And you're watching it like right out of the gate going, hey, it's not fair. You got Hart at the one end of the rink, and he's looking into the sun. And the game was 2-1 in the blink of an eye. Would they end up scoring 10 goals?
Yeah.
If we can talk about this stuff and realize that that's going to be a big issue, how could they have this thing implode on them right in front of everybody on national TV?
Yeah, I mean, you got to think that's going to be a thing. And, especially with kind of the angle of the sun in the wintertime, it was going to be an issue. And like you said, I mean, the backdrop was absolutely gorgeous. But, again, one of the things that you kind of look at with regards to these outdoor games is in a lot of instances, they've been played under gray, cloudy skies, some snow kind of blowing around, this and that. They really haven't had to contend with, the sun just kind of baking down on the ice rink. But
Adam, if you remember, the thing that sent the Winter Classic on its merry way, the very first one, 80,000 people at Rich Stadium, what was it, 2008, I think? Pittsburgh at Buffalo, in Rich Stadium, 80,000 people, big fat snowflakes. It's the beautiful thing. And then the league star, Sidney Crosby, scores the shootout winner. It was great. What no one remembers is that game took 4 hours to play because they must have stopped 15 times to fix the ice.
Yeah. And look, I mean, it's a great idea. And certainly from an NHL standpoint, it makes sense, to try and get these big ratings if you can get them and all of that. The problem is the novelty is kind of worn off. I mean, yeah, it was a beautiful setting. And the players, were very happy about, it kind of felt like pond hockey, being in that kind of atmosphere and all that. But then you actually get on the ice, and they were talking about right after practice, the ice is bad. The ice is slow. The ice is this. The ice is that. And the NHL really wound up being put in a very difficult situation, particularly with that first game, starting it, the long delay, finishing it in the dark of night, all that kind of thing. Not a good look for them. And, you sort of wonder here how these teams kind of react to having played in that situation. Of course, Vegas and Colorado, they played already. They wound up playing last night. Vegas won that game 3-0. But for Philadelphia and Boston now, going back home, going back east, they make that long trip out there for that one showcase game when they haven't left the East Coast all season long because of the way that the divisions worked out.
Yeah, well, definitely fade Philly against the Rangers tomorrow. Vegas and Vegas and Colorado, as you mentioned, played. Vegas stepped on Colorado's neck. It was the end of a 4-game set, and they went 2-2. That was a big win for Vegas. And Fleury's playing at a ridiculous level. But the teams that would go away from all the hype and playing outdoors, now going against teams that have been playing right along indoors, I think a big advantage to the Rangers in that next game. Because I think both Vegas and Colorado, the first period was nothing. They were trying to figure out what's going on. And then Vegas scored 3 in the second period, and they sort of sorted it out, and it turned into a hockey game. But that first period was really kind of a weird thing for them after coming from the outdoors to the indoors. And I'm scurrying here, looking for the Bruins long break. Boy,
they play Thursday, right?
They don't play till Thursday at the Island, but I'd probably maybe take a peek at the Islanders in that one. But I do like the Rangers. Plus, Philly's really undermanned with the COVID thing.
Yeah, the Rangers, looks like there are some places that do have overnights up already for the Wednesday card, and it does look like the Rangers will be a dog in that game in the plus 105, plus 110 range. So,
well, don't forget Panarin's not playing for them.
Right.
And, basically they're telling you it's a pick 'em if they're even giving you 20 cents for home ice advantage. I mean, all that matters now is travel. Although it looks like we're getting close to getting fans announced last night here. Thankfully, things have really, really started to trend the right way. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, you were getting 700 cases a day in Vegas. And 2 days ago, there were only 30 new cases. And they put a proposal together, and I guess it's starting in March, 15%. So there's going to be 2,600 people at Vegas games. That's going to be the interesting thing. I've got their team president, Kerry Bubo, is going to come on Vegas Hockey Hotline tomorrow. How do you do that? you know, how do you say, yeah, you're one of the 2,600? I mean, these people are going to be throwing elbows at each other how are you going to decide who gets in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, season ticket holders get priority, and maybe the season ticket holders that spend the most money.
It's all season ticket holders. They get 13,000 of them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What are you going to do? I mean, I wonder. I can't wait to hear his answer because it's a hard thing to figure out. I would imagine there'd be some sort of rotation. You know, if you get one this game, you're out of the loop for the next 4 or 5. I'd be the only way. But then the problem you've got is, well, you know, nobody's going to be sitting all in their seats. You're going to spread them out all around the arena. You know, you got some people, their tickets $350 a game, and somebody else's tickets $80 a game. You know, they want more money, but the people that's paying $300, they're not sitting in the $300 seat. They're sitting in the upper deck.
No, that's a good question. I guess
dog's breakfast.
Kind of wait and see how it all plays out. And I know, you know, the Indians and the Reds are supposed to have 30% capacity potentially here for the upcoming baseball season. So
that's decent.
Getting back to some semblance of normalcy, I guess, here. Let's take a look at the Tuesday night card, Brian. And, you know, Montreal and Ottawa, the top game on the board here. And I talked about this last week where in looking at some of the metrics and kind of taking a look at what's gone on with the Montreal Canadiens to this point, they did look like they were overachieving a little bit. Carey Price kind of playing out of his mind, especially on high-quality scoring chances. The Canadiens have hit a little bit of a rough patch here, and we are seeing some money come in on Ottawa for tonight's game, where Montreal's come down about 10 or 15 cents or so. But I thought that was an interesting line movement, and the only line of the night that's, you know, got a pretty sizable favorite.
Yeah, I mean, if you're jumping in on this one, I would say Montreal on the puck line. Listen, when you go through this, you know, water finds its level, okay? The one thing, and I'm just going to give you a whole bunch of them, and go do your homework and look them up. But trust me when I tell you, these things have been working. New series, over in the first game of a new series, under in the second game. Team that loses the first game, it's a starting point with the revenge factor. No one can afford the big losing streaks. But Ottawa beat Montreal 3-2. Oh, okay, good for them. Well, they beat Montreal 3-2 because they were thoroughly embarrassed. They got beat 7-3 by the Leafs. That's their hockey players. When you get embarrassed like that, you know you're getting called out and you're playing for your job. So the Senators played Montreal in the first game after morbidly getting embarrassed by the Leafs and won the game 3-2. Now, Montreal's sitting there feeling, even though they only lost 3-2 to Ottawa, they're feeling like they got morbidly embarrassed. Now, you know, I'm not in the business of saying, oh, yeah, jump all over this big favorite in the NHL, but there's certainly the one thing you've got that's sitting there is the puck line. So I would look for don't get me wrong, I think Ottawa's going to be really good down the road with these young guys. And they're going to play spoiler, and they're going to have their good nights. But so much of what's going on in the NHL, Adam, it's situational stuff. Teams are getting off to a good start on a road trip. They want to get a trip off to a good start. The one thing we've talked about on this podcast, and it's happening left and right, a 4-game road trip or longer, that last game on the road, fade that team. They have mentally checked out. They are already on the bus heading to the airport. They want to get the hell home. There's just so many things that are just, yep, that checks a box, play that, and it's happening all around the league.
Yeah, and there were some over the weekend, too. You know, Montreal and Toronto played on Saturday night, and they were in that, you know, spotlight hockey night in Canada situation, which it was still a big deal to the players. I mean, you know, as a kid growing up in Canada, that's what you watch on Saturday nights. You know, you wind up in that spot watching hockey night in Canada. Montreal beat Toronto on the road in the first game that they played. I think it was a week or two prior. Toronto gets revenge in that spot on Saturday. Also on Saturday, Carolina beats Tampa Bay 4-0. What does Tampa Bay do on Monday? Comes back and wins 4-2. You know, because like you said, you don't want to get swept in those back-to-back situations.
You make adjustments.
Right. And there's also that too. You know, like Edmonton and Calgary. Calgary won the first game between the two teams, and then Edmonton goes and wins the next two.
Well, I was just going to bring up Calgary. Just exactly what we just said about Ottawa. They got embarrassed. Their professional pride was called out, and then they came back and beat Montreal. Calgary, it's one thing to lose to your arch rival, but when Calgary loses 7-1 7-1 to your arch rival. Then they go to Toronto, who's been the team that's kind of cruising through this division. After being morbidly embarrassed 7-1, Calgary won 3-0 at Toronto the next game because they played it like a playoff game after being embarrassed. If these two teams, you just plop it down the middle of the week and you go, nope, Toronto's at home to Calgary, Toronto. But if you look at the schedule and go, Calgary, you just rolled over like dogs in their last game and have been hearing it from their coach for 48 hours, and they're shuffling lineups, and you're in danger of getting sent to the taxi squad. They're playing that game like it's a playoff game. But that was nothing more than a situational deal. And these things are happening all around the league on a nightly basis.
Well, here tonight, we got Pittsburgh and Washington, and this will actually be the 5th game already of this season between the two teams. Pittsburgh's won 3 of them. 2 were in overtime. So Washington's picked up that loser point a couple of times. So even though Pittsburgh's won 3 of the 4, Washington's managed to get points in 3 of 4 themselves. But you and I were talking about this before we started recording here, Brian, that Pittsburgh is just not very good in their own zone. And it's kind of surprising, the fact that they have won 3 out of 4 against a pretty talented Washington team so far.
By the way, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. 3 of the 4 have flown over the total.
Yep.
Go over 6 tonight. I mean, that's it's hard to play Pittsburgh under the total. Now, they've played 3 games in a row under, but 2 of them were against the Islanders, who are really hard pressed to put it in. And the Islanders play games where if the Islanders get a lead, they shut it down, and it turns into a left wing lock. So, I mean, honestly, Pittsburgh gets away from the Islanders for 2 games, and now they're back against Washington. It should be a track meet. That doesn't mean the goalies can't stop you and beat you, but just the flow of the game, getting away from playing a team like the Islanders, Pittsburgh and Washington with all the weaponry on the ice. And honestly, the goaltending's, pretty ordinary. The Vinnychek kid was really good out of the gate for the Caps, and they needed him, but he kind of flattened out a little bit. So, that one makes sense to me. They hate each other. The total is safer than the side, if you ask me.
Last one I want to ask you about with regards to tonight is Edmonton and Vancouver. As we just talked about, Edmonton back-to-back wins over Calgary. Vancouver is, not playing particularly well. They've lost 8 of 10. They cannot defend in their own zone. They've really had all kinds of issues here, in particular on the road where they've lost 8 of 11. They are back at home tonight, though. And as I said, they are taking on an Edmonton team that just scored 2 wins against its arch nemesis. But the Oilers are playing very, very well. So is that just a stay-away game for you where too many of the situations kind of cancel each other out? Or do you have a thought on that one?
Well, the current form, it's clearly Edmonton's figured it out, and Edmonton's playing better. And by the way, very, very nice. So you're being a very good Samaritan this morning. Vancouver's not playing particularly well. They're playing horrible. It's yikes. I mean, Holtby, I don't know. Demko had a hot playoff run for them in the bubble to the point where, we don't need Markstrom. Yeah, you wish you had him now? No, that Vancouver thing is not good.
Yeah, and you sort of wonder, when or if it kind of comes back around. And, it's not like they're really getting a whole lot from, they're getting something from their key players, but they're getting absolutely nothing from Braden Holtby. And it looks like Braden Holtby has just fallen off a cliff over the last few years here after some very strong seasons for the Capitals. They're kind of doing this timeshare thing, and it's hard to have a timeshare when neither one of your goaltenders are playing very well. So, by
the way, pal, I mean, how bad is it? The only reason it doesn't look worse, but it is bad. When you look at the standings and they're next to last, and you go, they're only 3 points out of 4th place in the division to make the playoffs. No, they're not. They're 3 points behind Montreal, who has 5 games in hand on them. These guys have played more games. Let me double check. By a healthy margin, Vancouver has played more games this year than any team in the NHL. They're done. They have to go on a 7-game winning streak to have a chance.
Well, and that's one of those things too, where you kind of wonder about the mindset of a team, where they're already buried early on. And you'd have to rattle off, a 4, 5, 6 game winning streak just to kind of get yourself back sort of in the hunt. And, with the COVID protocols, with all of the restrictions and all that, and of course, the restrictions are even higher up in Canada for these teams. You just sort of wonder how much do these teams completely check out, where they've gotten off to a bad start and it may just snowball and get worse. And you just start thinking about your draft positioning or something like that.
Well, I was just watching these guys talk in Buffalo this morning on the Instigator show. And, the Sabres thing is a mess. I mean, 5-on-5, they can't in the ocean. They were just starting to play well, and then the COVID thing, they got sent off the tracks by the Devils. But that's all an excuse. And then they're talking about, well, it's going to be hard to make trades this year. No, it's not. I mean, you've got Seattle coming in. This trade deadline, you watch, teams are going to sit there going, oh, my God, we're going to lose 3. And, here are the 3 guys they're going to take. We know they're going to take one of these 3 guys. So what's the GM going to try to do at the trade deadline? He's going to try to move 2 guys, unless he thinks he's a contender to win the thing. He's going to want to get something for 2 of the guys that he knows he would lose and say, here's the guy. Here, take, nobody's going to do what in the NHL, what happened with Vegas, where McPhee made them take a pledge and they fleeced him. Oh, here's a first-round pick. Would you guys please take William Karlsson? Minnesota, here, take Alex Tuck and Eric Halla, but don't take one of my defensemen, and half of them are gone now anyway. All these GMs are going to say, hey, look, here's my list of 10. Lose my phone number.
I agree. And
teams are going to be making deals because Seattle's coming in.
Yeah, and that'll be here before we know it, too. I mean, we're not that far away, really, from the NHL trade deadline and all the transactions that come with that. And, of course, we'll have to see what they do from a playoff standpoint. If they do percentage of points or whatever they decide to do, that'll impact what some of these teams do at the trade deadline as well. So should be a lot of fun here as we go throughout the spring. I assume, spring's kind of coming here at some point, at least for us. But let's go to the golf side of things here, Brian.
Boy, listen, I got to get on with my day here. I got other stuff to do, but you're the one who opened this kettle of fish before we started. Now you're not even going to go there?
No, I'm not going to go there. We don't have time.
You chicken.
We'll do it on another show.
Chicken.
We don't need an analytics fight on today's
show. My God. All right. I get it. I'm all ready to go. Go ahead. That's funny.
All right. No, we're going over the golf side of things here. I don't need to get you all riled up on a Tuesday.
That's hilarious. You're funny. All right.
All right. So let's talk golf here, and let's go to the WGC-Workday Championship, which usually, or at least the last 4 years, this event was in Mexico. Now, it used to be at Doral, then it went down to Mexico, in Mexico City, I think, and then now it's in Bradenton, Florida at the Concession Golf Club. It's a Jack Nicklaus course that hosted the 2015 NCAA men's and women's championships, won by Bryson DeChambeau. He's plus 1850 this week. But, Brian, I mean, this odds board, anybody who's anybody in golf is in this tournament, to the point where you're getting a Brooks Koepka at 26-1, a Colin Morikawa at 4650 at DraftKings, Tommy Fleetwood's 55-1, Harris English, a guy who's regularly 28 or 30-1, is almost 62-1. What a loaded field we've got here in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, anybody makes a case for a guy in this field. I mean, okay. Unless you're just being contrarian. I mean, it's hard to make a case against virtually anybody in this field because they're all that good, and that's what you get. To the point where Dustin Johnson was 4-1 the one tournament, now in this field, and he's amazing. He's 7-1, but he was off kilter on Sunday. He wasn't hitting fairways. He had one ordinary day, and he was just kind of right there, and it was not going to be part of the equation when Homa and Finau put it together on Sunday. You can make a case for anybody. I would just say this to you. This, again, fits the profile of try to get yourself a price going in, and then either Friday night or Saturday night, you sit there and, somebody on Friday you could take that's 5 or 6 back and get an overlaid price. And then on Sunday, you could take somebody at an overlaid price that maybe is 3 back that goes out early and posts a score. And that's the way you got to bet this. I would say to you, of the guys, and they're all incredible, 20-1 is a juicy price on Ty Hatton. Ty Hatton has been basically on the first page of virtually every tournament he's been playing. And from a current form perspective, Ty Hatton, you got a funny feeling. I think Louis Oosthuizen's game, you always thought of Louis maybe at the Masters or at the British Open, and he contends. He just doesn't win that up. But Louis Oosthuizen's game's been really, really good, and he rolls the rock. 60-1 is a monster price on a guy like Louis Oosthuizen. But the guy that's coming in really good current form is Cam Smith at 50-1. He was right there with a chance to win on Sunday. The kid is just an incredible putter and ball striking. Don't forget, he finished second at the Masters last year. So if you're sitting there you're looking at an overlaid price, who's one of those guys? It's a guy like Cam Smith. And he was one of those guys too, Adam, if you remember, when the President's Cup ended last year, we said, all those guys that were in that President's Cup, young guys that started to make a name for themselves, like, watch out, and Cam Smith went out of there and won a tournament, and then went and he was second in the Masters. I like a kid like Cam Smith. So I'd say Hatton, Louis, and Cam Smith for me for starters, and then let's see how it unfolds. But it'll be an intriguing event. And Patrick Reed's the defending champ at 30.
Yeah, Cam Smith, I heard him talking about him on the broadcast late Sunday, mentioning that, we're back to Bermuda greens here down in Florida. And Cam Smith, an Australian guy, kind of used to playing on those Bermuda greens. So I don't remember who was the commentator who said something, but that was kind of brought up as a potential talking point with Smith, over the next few events here in Florida.
Sure.
And possibly being a good look.
But he was playing really good on the tough Kikuyu stuff. Now he's going to his preferred surface.
Well, and as I look at this tournament, I mean, first of all, some of the prices on these guys are kind of incredible. I mean, I don't know the last time we saw Justin Thomas, basically in the 19-1 range. And I mean, I don't know. To me, I just sort of look at a price like that and I think to myself, can I not take, is there a way I can't take this? Because you don't see a guy like Thomas that far down the board behind, several guys. And I don't know, I mean, maybe, coming off of a little bit of time to himself with his family after the passing of his grandfather, all that, maybe he gets a little bit of a break, kind of gets back into form. But when you look at this course and you look at a lot of Nicklaus designs, this is a course where you've got small greens. And to me, I'm looking at iron play and I'm looking at Colin Morikawa. I mean, at plus 4,650 at DraftKings, I think he's 40-1 at BetMGM. Morikawa at a price like that is very hard to pass on. I know this is a great field for sure, and he's going to have to putt the ball well on these Bermuda greens. But in terms of guys that can stick it close to the flag and go flag hunting, even on small green complexes, I think Morikawa is definitely one of those. And then in the 70-1 range, look, I'm going to do it again. I don't know if he's got the chops to win a field like this, but Will Zalatoris just keeps playing well. And it doesn't matter where, and it doesn't matter who. He just keeps playing well. So 70-1, maybe a shot, 11-1 for a top 5, plus 450 for a top 10. Somebody like him on my list. And then lastly, Kevin Kisner putts really well in the Bermuda at 100-1. I don't mind taking a shot with a guy like that either.
Yeah, the other one I would say to you that I'd take a long look at, and because I've been saying this, he's going to win. And when he wins, this price is gone forever, is Scotty Scheffler at 40-1. When he wins, he's gonna be. I think Scheffler's like for the next few years, he would be the next Xander Schauffele kind of guy. But the Schauffele 2-3 years ago was always 40-1. Now Schauffele's always 15-20-1. Once Scheffler wins, he's going to be 25-1 or lower for the next 5 years. So the question is, can you catch him at the overlaid price before it happens?
Yeah, and Scheffler's a guy, great ball striker. And this is a course where the fairways are pretty wide. So, the green complexes are small, but the fairways are pretty wide, gives you a little bit more margin for error. So maybe you take a look at a guy like Scheffler here. in this one, but we've actually got two PGA Tour events. The WGC.
Hey, real quick. I'm sorry. Just for giggles. This kid on the European Tour, I mean, how quietly he's done this. The Rasmus Højgaard kid is in here at 150 to 1. What is he? He has a couple of, at least 2 wins, doesn't he, on the European Tour? He's 150 to 1. The kid's 19 years old. What a story that would be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's a guy I kind of took a little bit of a look at because if I remember correctly, in those really good runs on the European Tour, he also played extremely well with his irons. So, again, that's a big wagering angle here for that Nicklaus course, the Concession. But the Puerto Rico Open, this is fascinating to me. I mean, this is a really good field for an alternate event because you've got a lot of players here coming over from the European Tour that want to be close to Florida because you've got 4 straight events in Florida. The WGC, then you've got, I think, the what's next? The Arnold Palmer, I think. And then the Players.
You usually get Bay Hill and
Players, then the Honda Classic.
The Honda Classic. Yeah.
So you got 4 straight events here in Florida. So in this Puerto Rico Open, you get Thomas Pieters, you get Ian Poulter, Brandon Grace, Emiliano Grillo, Benny On, not that he plays a lot on the European Tour, but he's here. Ollie Schneider-Jans, he's here. Guy that likes to play on the European Tour quite a bit. Different course this year for this event as well, the Grand Reserve Country Club. So no course history for either PGA Tour event this week. Admittedly, I haven't done as much work on this tournament as I did on the WGC, but Brian, is there any direction you can point us in for the Puerto Rico Open?
Yeah, take a couple of small little flyers and have at it. 8 of the last 12 that have won this tournament have made it their first PGA Tour win. We did videos on this and the WGC event that'll be up at ats.io. Yeah, the name guys: Poulter, Pieters, Wallace. Oh, by the way, all your Grillo, Grace, Ben On. So the top 6 aren't American for starters. Andrew Putnam's the top American, 25 to 1. 8 of the last 12 winners of the Puerto Rico Open have made it their first PGA Tour win. So that kind of tells you you're not crazy to go price hunting in this one. I think Tom Lewis is the guy that's kind of coming in with some decent form at a price that's acceptable at 25 to 1. But beyond that, maybe just go digging around, do a little more homework when we get closer to this. Like Kiradech Aphibarnrat is in here. Now, I don't know what's happened to him. He's kind of fallen off the map, but there's a guy that's got game when he's on his game, and he's a monster price. Uline's been okay at times on the European Tour at 75 to 1, but the top 10 of the Korn Ferry Tour are playing in this event. The top 10 of the Korn Ferry Tour get an exemption into this and the other 3 alternate field events. So you want to find some guy that's consistently kicking the tires on the Korn Ferry Tour, and you're going to get a big price on him. It's not the craziest swing for the fences because historically somebody you ain't never heard of is going to win this thing.
Yeah, I think maybe as I'm kind of looking through the board here, somebody like Joseph Bramlett at 70 to 1 is maybe not a bad look. That's a guy that had a lot of success on the Korn Ferry Tour, came over to the PGA Tour, I think right after the shutdown, and actually played well in a few events before kind of falling back into obscurity a little bit. The one thing I will say about Grand Reserve Country Club, there are 2 courses here. I don't know if both of them are in play or not. Maybe it's just the championship course, but the championship course is 7,500 yards to par 72. So I would presume that Bombers will do really well here. And Thomas Pieters, the guy that hits it a long way, as one of the co-favorites. So that's something I would take a look at. And again, as you said, once you get your WGC handicapping out of the way, then you can kind of take a look at this Puerto Rico Open.
Yeah, I think you can like swing for it. I do. I mean, I think like Zalatoris, by the way, is the guy with all the Korn Ferry Tour points, and he's gone. He's in the WGC event.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's definitely a good point there. All right, so we finish up this edition of ATS Radio on the NASCAR side of things here. The Dixie Vodka 400 at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Last year, the race at Homestead was not going to be the finale. It wound up getting run in June. It got moved around because of the COVID-19 shutdown. and all of that. But this race goes from being the final race, the championship race, to now being held the last weekend in February. But it is the first 1.5 mile race, and this begins a stretch for the drivers of regular oval tracks. You've got Las Vegas, you've got Atlanta, you got Phoenix in the mix. So with the fact that we've got Michael McDowell and Christopher Bell as guys occupying 2 of the 16 playoff spots right now, Brian, you got to think there's a heightened sense of urgency for the guys that, typically dominate and run well in the, 1 and 1.5 mile ovals.
I mean, part of you wants to say it's a 2-horse race, right, with Hamlin and Harvick based on what happened last year on the 1.5 mile tracks. And the overlay is Harvick at 8-1. I mean, I that would be your starting point. Chase Elliott's on the board at 5-1. Truex is being really aggressive, and you can look long and hard at him. Kyle Larson's driving good. I mean, there's a guy with a chip on his shoulder. Keselowski's a lunatic, by the way. If you watched him on the road course, Keselowski was the car that should have won Daytona, the way that thing shook out. But I don't know how you go much further than expecting to see Hamlin and Harvick again, maybe pull away and see who else can step up there. I've played him the first couple of weeks with no results. The price is telling me he's live here a little bit is Tyler Reddick. I think Tyler Reddick's going to win a race or 2 this year. This kid just is pedal to the metal and fearless, and he was taken out at Daytona in the first big accident, and then the road course is the road course. So the first 1.5 mile track, it's not going to shock me to see Tyler Reddick run really well, and I'd be taking a look at Tyler Reddick in matchups.
Tyler Reddick last year, 3rd in stage 1, 2nd in stage 2, and then 4th at the finish in this race. So Tyler Reddick ran really well in this race last year, certainly contributing to his price being down in that 20-1 range. The one guy that I'm looking at here, an overlaid price, as you would say, Ryan Blaney at 16-1 at DraftKings is just way too big of a number. I know he didn't run particularly well in either Daytona race, but when you think back to last season, when you think back to after the shutdown where they wound up running at a lot of 1.5 mile tracks, Blaney had the best car or close to it most of those weeks, and he just ran into, some occurrence, some happenstance. He'd blow a tire, something would go in, his engine. So he'd get caught up in somebody else's wreck.
Speeding, going onto pit lane.
Yeah.
Pit crew makes a mistake. And, oh, by the way, don't forget the clash on the road course before the duels. Before he was ahead. He was winning the road course thing, and Elliott took him out on the final turn. I mean, this guy's got the worst luck of anybody. He's got a great car.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe this is the Tony Finau theory. I don't know, maybe I need Blaney to actually get to victory lane before I want to back him. But at 16-1 in a race like this, where I know he's going to have the car, I have to take a shot with something like that. But like you said, I mean, look, I'm not going to be the least bit surprised if this comes down to Hamlin and Harvick. I mean, they won 16 of the 36 races last year. And as I said, I think there's only 6.5 mile racetracks in the regular season here this year because they've added more road courses. They have a dirt race. They got all kinds of stuff going on. If you're somebody who's got to win on an oval, which to me, I think is a guy like a Kyle Larson, like a Kevin Harvick, something like that, you better, Ryan Blaney, you better do it soon. So, those are kind of the guys I'm looking at here this week.
Yeah, the one more you got to throw in. Again, we're saying these 2 guys, Harvick and Hamlin, just make the most sense. But the one guy that it's funny how he flies under the radar because he's a nut bar and he's aggressive and he is a win early kind of guy. Secure his playoff spot. I mean, that's a 12-1 with all things being equal on Logano. Logano is, and he wins in the early stages of a season usually.
Yeah, no, that's true. And he's I think he ran 2nd in the road course race last week. So, he had a pretty good showing in that one.
He ran 2nd in the road course race. He was leading the Daytona 500 on the last lap.
He's had a good car so far.
That yellow and red cars, believe me, it's always there. He's not hard to spot. And he's usually the one that's, either getting involved or taking someone out. I mean, he's part of the discussion. He's going to have an impact on the race. Let's put it that way.
So, I mean, to me, this sort of sets up exactly what we said about the WGC, where, look, I mean, you can make a case for any short price in this race. So, find one or two that you like, maybe kind of take a piece of them. The one thing I am kind of thinking with regards to Harvick here is he's 5-1 this week. I don't know what his price will be next week in Vegas. I don't know what it'll be in Atlanta. I know he'll have a short price in Phoenix because, I mean, it's just his track and he runs very well there. I've got to think Harvick wins one of the next four. So I will probably have a piece of Harvick this week, next week, and the following week if he doesn't win one of those three races, because him and his team have to realize, look, we need to get one of these longer, oval tracks, because if we're trying to win a road course race or something like that down the line, probably not a great fit for us, because really when I think about it, there's Charlotte, there's Michigan, which is a big 2.5-mile track, and then the craziness that happens at Pocono. Otherwise, there aren't really a lot of big tracks where I think Harvick is set up for success. He's got to get one of the next four, I think.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, last year, it was the Kevin Harvick show. And when you got to the Final Four, he wasn't even there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline, covered a lot of ground here on today's show. We'll be doing the same thing on your show here in a little bit of time.
Yeah, man, look forward to it on Tuesday. And Adam joins us 2 to 4 Eastern on the Sports Grid Radio Network, Sirius Channel 204 Sportsbook Radio. Adam will be on in the 2 o'clock hour today. We're there with you weekdays with the sportsbook directors and guys like Bruce Marshall, Andy Isco. Guys cover both sides of the counter for you. And locally, we do Vegas Hockey Hotline at kshp.com. That is at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And we have great guests from around the hockey world that jump on with us on that fine program. And if you're really into the hockey, the job Adam does for you, we're doing a hockey betting podcast. You can get it on my Twitter at Brian Blessing. I do it with Cam Stewart. The hockeybettingpodcast.ca is the website with accompanying articles. So a lot of good stuff for you there, too.
Yeah, definitely a lot going on. And this afternoon, I'll get up Brian's two videos, the Puerto Rico Open and the WGC-Workday Championship, over on our ATS YouTube page.
Hey, real quick, before we wrap it up, I just wanted to say this. One of the coolest things last night, Marcus Foligno with Minnesota got in a fight with this kid. I'm trying to Kisnov is a young kid. Anyway, Minnesota's playing San Jose. Foligno's a badass. Well, young kid, who was the guy do you remember who was the guy? Was it Svechnikov that fought Ovechkin and Ovechkin knocked him out cold? Remember that?
Yeah, I think so.
So Foligno feeds this kid 2 vicious rights. And he's got this kid just ready to he could have pounded him into submission. After the first 2 punches, and he's holding the kid by the scruff, with his right hand, he waves to the linesman, come here. Like, end this. I don't want to hurt the kid. It was pretty cool. He said, look, he goes, guys have cut me a break in the past. He goes, I had him. He said, I didn't want to hurt him. I mean, there's a code and honor. You got to love hockey players. I mean, he could have beat this kid to a pulp, and he called it off, and he threw the kid a bone. And that was classy, man. I thought Foligno deserved. He's my hero of the day.
All right. Well, there you go. Good note to end on here on today's edition of the show with Brian.
And I
Blessing.
love fighting too.
I know you do. I know you do. You're an old school guy. You're definitely an old school guy.
Yeah. When are we doing this analytics thing?
Next week. We'll do it next week. We had 2 golf tournaments to get to. We'll do it next week.
You turtled. You pulled the Claude Lemieux.
All right, that's fine. I turtled. So be it. All right. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it, man.
All right, pal.
There you go. There's Brian Blessing again, at Brian Blessing on Twitter, sportsbookradio.com, kshp.com for Vegas Hockey Hotline, and then, of course, Sportsbook Radio on SiriusXM 204, the Sports Grid Radio Network. Coming up on Wednesday, we'll chat some college hoops and some UFC with Kiev O'Neill from the Odds Breakers. Thursday, we'll talk more FCS college football with Brad Powers. Friday, I'll probably do another Freestyle Friday show just to finish up the week. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.